Welcome to the Hidden World of Women, a podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. My name is Emma and I'll be your host for today's episode. Today I'm joined by another amazing woman. I'm joined by Melissa. Melissa is a speaker and consultant and she raises awareness of trans issues. She has a dog called Chloe, enjoys walking, and she writes about diversity and inclusion. And that's where I actually found Melissa. And, first started seeing her writing was in a Facebook page called Today's Joy, where she spoke about her experiences as a trans woman. So thank you so much for joining me this morning, Melissa.
Thank you for having me, Emma.
So you do identify as a trans woman?
Yes, that's correct.
And can I just say, and I should have said this before we start, now I'm going to do my utmost to make sure that I'm using the right language and that I'm not being in any way offensive. If I am, it is completely, it's not conscious, so please let me know and I will change the language that I'm using. Know that it, I guess, comes from not a good place. Obviously, we don't say the wrong thing in it from a good place, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
right?
I know what you mean, yep.
Yeah, fab. So tell me a little bit about your story.
I was brought up in Auckland many moons ago, over 40 years ago as a child. I guess I knew it was always different to the other boys, but I didn't quite understand why, and there was no internet in those days back in 1980, 81, so there's no such thing as Google, never heard of, or let alone a mobile phone.
It's so funny, isn't it, to sort of go,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, how did that all... We had to look things up in the library and you needed to know...
Library, encyclopedia.
That's it. Nobody ever went down a rabbit hole of reading the encyclopedia. So...
We had the encyclopedias at home, yep. I remember looking at those, yes, as a teenager, yep. So I think the first computer we had at home was an Atari computer.
Yeah. So. Back in a late last century, as my children love to say.
Late last century, yeah, that's right. It's like Apple computers, I think they were the first ones they had at high school. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I've taken us on a tangent already.
No, that's all right. I didn't really want to play with... I prefer playing with my girl cousins and the girls instead, but obviously at intermediate school, primary school, I only had like one male friend there. I got dipped underwater at Boys Brigade when I was younger, so I just wanted to go across to the Girls Brigade camp, not understanding why at that time. And about a month later, as a result of being dipped underwater, nearly drowning, nearly drowned at a pool. I can see the link between the two events subconsciously. I couldn't see it at the time. But I know as a teenager, didn't really get on with everyone. I was always shy, awkward child, and I did cross-dress a bit as a teenager, tried to bury it, did normal things, talking to some other older trans. And you try and bury it when you're younger, not understanding it, what's going on necessarily, but sort of having half of an inkling knowing that you're not born in the right body or your gender identity is different. So from there, obviously, as a young adult, I just did the normal things. Played sport, night clubbing, tried to bury who I was, but it never really went away, and it resurfaced when I went away one weekend, went to Waiheke Island and sort of, found myself dressing again. And not long after that, a year or two later, I went and lived in Melbourne and I started exploring it more and felt it more comfortable to do that in Melbourne rather than Auckland back in late 90s, when obviously probably not even heard of transgender or very rare that anyone would know what it meant. So I lived part-time for a very long time, just going out dressed in the spare time, and was trying to maintain two identities for a very long time. So obviously still had to work, etc. I guess the tipping point for me to go and live full-time was seeing my dad die in hospital. So like a year later, I started the transition process and told work and went from there, I guess. And I guess raising awareness was probably through my own experiences, or good or bad, of wanting to make it easier for trans people during that time and afterwards. So
going back, you mentioned that you had been not born in the right body. And it's really tricky, I guess, but when did you start feeling like that?
Well, looking back, I can see that goes back to my childhood. At the time, you're a child, you don't understand, and you don't have anyone to ask. Like now it's totally different for children.
Yeah.
They've got the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne, so children that identify as transgender, then obviously they can go get appropriate treatment now, and that's great that we've got that facility now. But in my day, like, it's no such thing, so you didn't really know what was going on. So at the time, you always felt, just different, and you didn't understand why, I guess, as a kid, because I think kids are a lot more in tune with themselves emotionally and spiritually than perhaps my generation were. So growing up back then, 40 years ago, so it's a completely different world now.
I definitely think there's a lot more that we're doing with our kids around that emotional intelligence, as opposed to, that's okay, just push it down, we're going to bury it and ignore it for as long as possible, which was probably more of the parenting techniques going back 40 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. My parents were fighting a lot, so it wasn't a great environment to be brought up in. Anyway, been family, domestic violence sort of situation, being brought up in that environment wasn't the best anyway. So,
So you spoke about having two identities, and then when your father passed away, that was almost the catalyst to go, you know what, it's time to just embrace Melissa. Did you come out to your dad?
Well, I went and saw him in 2014 in hospital and looked really sick. So just sort of, it's a big decision to make. So eventually, end of 2014, told my team leader, and then 2015 started transitioning in the workplace and got some interesting questions about, because I was openly bi at that time, about being will I have a boyfriend or a girlfriend? What bra size will I be? Things you normally ask people. What's your bra size, Emma?
Well, do you know what? I work in a women's organisation, and so I can't say what's normal, because we would get asked that quite often.
But, really.
It's not normally something that someone would ask you in Coles.
Outside, I get that. That's your sense. But
that's it. And I do find it difficult because, for me, I would ask, that's sort of the environment that I'm in. But I do understand that's not.
That's in your environment, I get it. But
not necessarily in other places. So what was your reaction? So the team leader was the first person that you told?
I was one other work colleague sort of knew was thinking about it and making that decision, but one or two other people might have known, flatmate, but yeah.
What was their reactions?
Oh, they were generally supportive. Pretty laid back and supportive of it, so I was lucky there. But then there's other people that weren't necessarily supportive of it or understood. So.
And so you said that you had the questions like, what bra size will you be, and will you date men or women? Were there any other unusual type questions, or what were people's?
Some people
questions?
didn't like the idea of me using the female toilets, so they called someone down in to speak to them about that. And yes, it was interesting. And there was another trans person who transitioned before me on the floor just by coincidence, and they asked in an open forum what effects hormones have on our sex life. So I think it's the curiosity factor. So they're asking it out of curiosity, but we answered it. But it's just bizarre.
So, how did the workplace handle the toilet situation?
I just had someone come in and talk to them, and I wasn't in the room at that time. But interesting.
It is really interesting. So we had an issue at work where somebody brought something up similarly and said that they wanted to change our disabled toilet into an accessible toilet for this exact reason. I was like, why? But anyway, that's another story. But I find it really interesting that these people had no issue with you being in a men's toilet as an openly bi person, but have an issue with you. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all.
It's just people. Well, I suppose it wasn't openly bi till later on, but some people probably knew I was bi in the workplace, but and some people didn't probably. So probably there were some people that probably knew or had an inkling but didn't say anything. So I just took my time transitioning in the workplace. I told the Victoria Racing Club where I was a member, so I managed to get a gender identity policy introduced there, so that was good. And I guess through my experiences over the next couple of years going out, just living day to day, going to a bar at that time. I think one day I was wearing a red wig or whatever coloured wig I was wearing at the time, brown, I think, brunette. Going to a bar and just seeing all the passive-aggressive behaviour from people in society, because it was relatively new, even back in 16, 17, transgender people. So you see the sort of negative reaction and people feel totally uncomfortable. And being an empath, I could pick up on all that straight away. So you just see it in the workplace, in society. Or going out to a restaurant with a friend and being called sir because he's got a male voice. So and you look masculine.
So would they still call you sir if you were dressed in women's clothing?
Yeah.
Wow. That's okay. Yeah, you would think that if you feel uncomfortable...
Well, that was back then.
Yeah.
We went to one restaurant and it's just one experience.
Yeah, but it's still your experience.
That was experience back then. And yesterday somebody called me ma'am, so it was nice because I haven't had voice surgery. I'm having that later this year, but do that before facial surgery, but facial feminization surgery. But over the phone's a pain.
Yeah.
Oh, can you get Melissa? No, I am Melissa.
Yeah. You want to do this as a Zoom call? So tell me about the gender identity policy.
Oh, that was just more, I think, at the time, trying to make it easier for other trans in the future, not just myself, and just because there'd be some people there wouldn't like it. You obviously using the female toilets, and I know going Melbourne Cup Day, standing with a friend next to a couple of members there, older members, saying, it shouldn't be allowed, just saying nothing.
And so was there issues with changing your membership over from a previous name and a male to being Melissa and female on the membership? Was that part of that as well?
No, that wasn't
relatively
easy.
Yeah,
they made it quite easy for me because obviously I was changing documents around the same time, legal name and all that stuff. Once I got approval to go on hormones, go through that name change process. So doing that sort of stuff was quite time consuming, taking 5 weeks off work, running around. And even then you still forget something. So just changing getting married or divorced. So changing everything over and trying to remember everything you have to do, passport, driver's license.
Now, I am going to sound really naive here. So obviously I know the process for changing your name. Is there a process that you have to go through to legally change your identity?
I guess with changing your identity, well, that's really you identify as a female, for example, then obviously you would, back then you couldn't change your gender on the certificate, you could only change your name. Now it's a bit more difficult for me because I'm born overseas, so I'd have to change it overseas. And now you can change your birth certificate if you're born in Victoria to female if you want to change your birth sex as well. But the main thing was just your name changed, and then obviously you're identifying as a woman, getting it changed at work, changing in any memberships, clubs you belong to, just health members, health fund and all that sort of stuff. So it's just getting all the documentation and getting your passport changed, and so it's just interesting, the whole process. And back then, obviously, my Medicare and the government put me down as a female. Yet on the change of name certificate, it had my gender as male. So I know now, I think it's a process you can change that. It's not legally recognised, but you can change that. But so that was quite interesting.
Now, one of the things that we see and hear about is the importance of the importance of using someone's preferred pronouns, but not using someone's previous name.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about why that's important for you?
Well, I think it's like dead naming someone their old name, unless they're gender fluid. So, which means sometimes they might. And I've met one gender fluid trans person, and I've met one gender fluid female. So maybe in that situation, they might have preferred to use their old name. They may not, but just they just feel masculine sometimes and still want to be called by their female name. So I'm not an expert on gender fluid people, obviously, but I'm not. But in most circumstances, if someone's transgender female, obviously they would prefer to be called by their, current name, chosen name, as opposed to their old name, and use the right pronouns. So she, her, or if they're non-binary, they, them, just depending on who they are and how they identify.
Did you have issues with that, for example, in the workplace where people weren't happy to start calling you Melissa?
Most people were pretty... I think it was just the awkward, few months, I guess, and most people were pretty good. So,
and I think it's it's useful to recognise that for the people outside, most of us want to do the right thing, but it can feel awkward to suddenly start. And I obviously have only known you through Facebook as and as Melissa, so that's who you are. But if you've known someone for 40 years with a different name, to then start calling them something else, it feels odd.
Yeah, it does feel odd, yeah.
So, and I suppose it can just take a bit of time to get used to that, can't it?
Oh, definitely, yeah. It can definitely take for people to get used to that. I know I told Dad before he died. Mum's it's very hard with Mum. She's even up to this year, she's called me by my old name. Don't ring her as much. Just doesn't fully understand it or accept it, I don't think. So
I was going to ask, how did the rest of your family go with it?
Most of the rest of the family are okay with it. There might be a few in my family that I don't know that aren't okay with it, but as far as I know, most people in the family are okay with it.
Did you get the, kind of like we see on the television shows of, yeah, we've always known that?
No, not really. I think one person did say to me, I always knew there was something odd about you,
Something odd about you?
Yeah, I thought that's the most classic one I've had. Not a family member, but just someone I know. Someone that goes to the races as well, yeah.
Yeah, oh, far out. So tell me, what does transitioning actually mean?
Well, I guess you're moving from your old self that you identify into your real, authentic, true self. So, and what that looks like for each trans female is different to the next person, because I know some choose not to have any medically transition, just want to live as a female per se, if they were previously living as a male. And some just might only have breast surgery done, and others might go the full way. So every trans person is different. I think that's hard for society to sort of accept, because we've previously had, it's either one or the other, if that makes sense, fully male, fully female. So I think that's where society, and I understand someone's point of view disagrees with it. I always respect other people's opinions. So it's sort of hard to change society, the view of what gender is. And I guess we'll have the gender debate in future years to come.
So you have, you share your transition stories and the different processes that you go through, and you are going through medical transition.
I'm on HRT, so yeah.
And so you've started laser hair removal?
Yeah, I've started laser hair removal. I've started that face recently, first visit, so probably take quite a few visits, I imagine 6 or 7 before I start to see results, and a second visit of Brazilian for later on if I decide to have gender reassignment surgery. So
you mentioned having the laser hair removal, and I think you mentioned facial surgery as well.
Yeah, look, I've got quotes for that, rhinoplasty and facial surgery, so that's about 40 grand all up.
Oh.
Plus you've got your anaesthetist costs on top of that, and hospital costs on top of that as well.
That's a lot of money.
I know I took 19,400, I think it was, out of, well, that's how much the lump sum payment was gross, because it was tax. So I took $16,000 out of super to pay for my breast surgery.
Oh my goodness! So how much? So you were at $40,000 for facial surgery, and that you haven't had yet, but that's on the list. And then so the breast surgery was 16,000 all up. Did you say?
Well, it's around 16,000 thereabouts. 56,000
for that, and then I mean, laser hair removal, that's not cheap either.
No.
Oh, it's not something that you just go, oh, you know what, I might just go down this. Like, that's a lot of commitment. There's already a lot of barriers to somebody transitioning. You know, you've got all of the societal pressures and the issues with having to come out and how that may feel. But then if you decide for gender reassignment surgery as well, you're going to be up well above $100,000.
Yeah, that's probably not far off the mark.
That's a lot of debt.
Or if you take, so you sort of other things, you don't get your teeth fixed as quickly as you would like, and paying off a few credit card debts as well. So you're doing that, plus you've got to eat.
Yeah, because you really do have to eat and pay rent or mortgage every, month, week, fortnight. So you've still got to pay, and you have to work to live. You got to take you got to take time off. You said you took 5 weeks off just to go through the processes of changing your name.
And then I took 6 weeks off for breast surgery, or thereabouts. Yeah, I think it was 5 to 6 weeks. I'm trying to think now. Back, it would have been probably 6 weeks.
That's
4 to 6 weeks. About 4 to 6 weeks. Some people may take only 4, some may take 6, but I think I took about 4 to 6 weeks off work.
Yeah. How painful was that?
It wasn't too bad. I had to lay on my back for 6 weeks.
Okay, so there's part of that sounds amazing.
Hey, boys and girls.
That's it. So anything else, like, what are the other things that we wouldn't think about?
I suppose, I've already touched on the fact that some don't medically transition. They just live as a female. I guess I've touched on that.
Yeah.
People don't realise the costs involved. And like we've just discussed, we're talking earlier on about comments you get on your Facebook pages about your teeth or about you look like a man, that sort of thing. People don't realise the costs involved to have all that surgery, and they don't think that people have got to pay rent, as we discussed. Food and dentists aren't cheap, and plus you're doing laser hair removal as well. You're doing all this stuff if you're fully transition, and people just don't stop to think for a minute, So, and generally, over 95% of people support you and say you're beautiful. So people just don't realise how hurtful they can be of their comments, or they just got to learn to ignore the haters. But you just got to realise that I don't think people realise it's a long journey. They see Caitlyn Jenner and think, oh well, must be a pretty quick process. They don't realise it's a very long process. Do it in a week, no worries. Yeah, they don't realise the process involved.
So how long has it taken you so far?
Well, it's been 7 years. It was probably 5 years before I decided to have any surgery. So I took my time, didn't rush, just lived. Because they're big decisions to make. Even some trans people may only get breast surgery, but even to have that's still a big decision. So
and before you can have breast surgery, are you encouraged to have counselling or to talk?
Well, you've got to get a letter from your psychiatrist or psychologist in terms of getting approved. Got to you see the plastic surgeon, but I've got a psychiatrist. I see.
See, that really bothers me that you need to have, and I'm not sure because I sit on both sides of the fence. I think it's really great that you've got support because you're going to face adversity. So great for that. But the fact that you need approval from somebody else to say that you can have this, you're not an adult. Can you not make these decisions by yourself?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just hopefully in the future it'll be a bit more straightforward, and that really if you just have one visit to the psychiatrist and then you're cleared, and you have to get approval from the psychiatrist to go on hormones as well, to go when I started my journey. So I had to have 3 visits to the psychiatrist to get clearance for that with the GP. So
and I'm not trying to take everything to being about money, but but it sounds like I'm going to, because it's not cheap to go to a psychiatrist either.
No, it's not. No, yeah.
So 3 appointments for the to start going on hormones, and at least one for the breast surgery. That's another $1,000 there.
Yeah, or if they luckily enough, if they bulk bill, you might be lucky there. But
Not many psychiatrists bulk bill over here in
my
Western Australia anyway.
yeah, my one doctor Asmus just did because he knows me did a bulk bill me for the super form. He's got to fill out the super form because I've got to get that filled out by a psychiatrist to take money out of super for voice surgery.
Oh, that was voice surgery. What? How do they do voice surgery?
So there's it's called the Usen method. It's been developed. They'll just going to shave my Adam's apple, and then obviously cut and restitch your vocal cords so you can get more feminine pitch. Plus, you have voice lessons as well, of course, for 12 months. So.
Okay, well that's another at least $20,000-$30,000 there, isn't it?
That's well, I suppose 7. Oh no, that's not too bad. That'll be the cheapest. That'll be about 6,150 hospital fee. Yeah, probably looking about 6,400.
It adds up.
Yep.
And then you said voice lessons or speech therapy for a year?
Yep, there's another 130. Well, first visit's 135. You might get $30-$40 back. Then $95 a month.
I was just thinking, how do you have time for hobbies? Everything's around,
exactly.
All these medical procedures.
Yes, you don't. So, you sort of get to the point where you want to start to speed things up a bit. But obviously, you've got to allow your body, have that surgery, allow your body to recover. Obviously, because of COVID, it's probably 2 years since nearly 2 years. Coming December will be 2 years since I've had breast surgery. So I've had voice surgery. It'll be quite a gap, but you've got to allow your body to recover from one lot of surgery, give it at least 3 months before you embark on the next lot.
Yeah, and, you have to work as well. So, well, most people are in a situation where they need to work in between those surgeries in order to pay for the surgery. So...
and then you've got the boss says, just buy a computer. Well,
yeah.
Got all these other costs.
Of course. I guess with all of the working from home
stuff,
yeah. So, we didn't have so much of that over here. I mean, some people worked from home, but we didn't experience it in the same way that Victoria did. So, all of that's a little bit different to us. So, how has it gone with? I guess the difference now. So you spoke about when you were younger and not having access to the internet, and so not being able to kind of Google and see for supports and things like that. Is it easier now? I suppose on one hand, is it easier because you've got Google that's accessible for you, but on the other hand, schoolyard bullies are now literally living in your computer. So what's the pros and cons of where we're living at the moment?
I guess the pros for the kids, if they find a right school, they'd be pretty supportive of trans kids and trans teenagers. Obviously, the cons with Facebook is that as teenagers, they might face discrimination as they become adults and obviously get bullied online. So I'm a director of Just Social Owls, like an online human rights group. So we're trying to change that, but obviously change is slow and must have updated the social media laws so someone can now get obviously sued if they take it too far and bully someone online. But it still doesn't stop people making those comments on Facebook, like the one I just read out to you earlier on before we started recording. So
I think for our kids things are different. How do you think it is for you?
I think it's in some ways it's harder because you're obviously out there now as like a public figure, and then you're out there living day to day, and then you put yourself online, and then you obviously depending which group you're in, you don't know how people are going to react, and you get the odd some people are just can't handle it. I don't, just because I haven't got a feminine enough looking face for people, then they just say, "Dude, you're a man," sort of comment. And well, I do have breasts, by the way. Yeah. So, do you?
Do you know what? I know some men who have got a lovely pair of.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
And I suppose it's difficult because we're raising our kids, or fingers crossed, we're raising our kids to be more enlightened and more open and those types of things. But people in our generation and older haven't had that.
No, they haven't. No,
and
some are okay with it,
yeah,
some aren't. So,
and I think often the ones who are okay with it sit quietly in the corner, but the ones who aren't, they're the ones who are they're going to make some noise.
Yeah, all those that don't like you if you're in an event just won't talk to you. Yeah.
And this is going off on a total tangent, but I'm going to come back to where we are at the moment. So what you do a lot on Facebook. When you transitioned, did you leave that Facebook page and start a new one with Melissa?
I think probably back then I probably wasn't using Facebook much, and I probably I can't even remember, to be honest, whether I even had one. Probably just started it and had Melissa and started afresh. So I was lucky that way I didn't have to change old to new.
Yeah. I was just thinking about how does it go with things like Facebook memories when they pop up and they have it as, your photos of you as a man, and how do you respond to things like that?
Well, I probably didn't have a Facebook profile as a man. I didn't really have one, so I didn't have that issue. I guess some trans people, I imagine they'd probably just delete their old account. So.
Yeah. So one of the things that we come up against, both at sort of in my work with the women's health that I do, and then also with my husband and I run events, and it's about recognising the importance of kind of those acceptance and inclusion statements. So saying that, this event is open for GLBTQIA plus community. How important is that for you to know when you're walking into an event that you will be welcome?
I think it's very important, because you don't want to go to an event where you know that if there is an issue there, that the event organizer is not going to do anything about it. If they openly state before the event, well, that's LGBTIQA plus friendly, then that the event organizer's got an idea of it, or at least if you can contact them, and if they tell you whatever steps they'll take if someone does do anything inappropriate, then you'll feel more welcome that way, because God forbid if anyone said anything which was too controversial, overstepped the mark too much, then action would be taken. So, and more importantly, you want to go to an event where you feel welcome, where people are understanding and will talk to you.
So if I'm going to an event, 90% of the time, I can, I look at the event and go, well, I know that I'm going to be welcome and I'm going to be accepted there. Is that your experience?
Well, the reality is you just go to an event like I did yesterday. You don't know who's going to talk to you. You don't know if you go up to someone whether they'll accept you or not. And it's just like lotto. You don't know what lotto numbers you're going to get. You can take your lotto numbers every week, same set of numbers, but you don't know what's going to come out of the machine. So you've just got to take it as it comes, and just go and talk to people if they talk to you, that do, or if they're just polite and don't really engage too much, then you just accept that as well. They just don't really want to be nothing to do with the fact you're trans. It just maybe, don't know. So you just got to take that attitude, I think.
Does it make you more wary of going out or going places that you're unfamiliar with?
I think it does to a point, and getting bullied in the street recently and bullied on the bus sort of reminded me of, why trans people, some young trans people don't want to come out, because it's just all the discrimination you probably face in the workplace as you get older. You can understand why some people don't want to come out.
You spoke about getting bullied on the bus and bullied recently. Tell me about that. What happened?
I was just getting verbally abused on the bus, because I was sitting there working on my iPad, so my legs just a bit wider than I normally do, so maybe it looked more masculine. Oh, you're a man. Look at the way you're sitting. And just, he was drunk. But I mean, and this little old lady thinks it's quiet as a mouse. Just told him off and swore at him and told him off. It was quite funny in a way.
Awesome.
Looking about it.
Yeah.
Another guy said, mind your own business as well. So, but it was a shock. I haven't had that for a long time. But
is it still something that people are concerned? So, going back to the 80s and 90s, people who identified as GLBTQIA, they were more, I guess, more worried and more at risk that they may be verbally assaulted or physically assaulted. Is that still a risk in 2022?
I think it's still a risk in terms of, I suppose it's been well publicised, the issues Danielle Laley has had. And I know, like, when I got bullied online, and then someone ringing me up all the time and speaking with the police about it, and they weren't exactly the best about it. And
so somebody ringing you up?
Yeah.
In what way?
It started off being stupid, like, oh, this is vague, blah, 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 that sort of silly message. And then near the end, it got a bit crazy, like, hang yourself, go kill yourself, Melissa. You can't be a supermodel type of thing. So it was like I had to change my number because of that and take my number off my website. So, and like it just changes the way you think about things and do things after that experience. And trying to get rid of the bully or trying to stop them, very hard. And like, if you take out an intervention order against them, then it becomes tit for tat, and it's just a minefield, I think.
That's insane that somebody would actually... Look, I don't understand people shouting negative comments in the street or things like that, but it's just not okay.
Mm.
In the moment, you're surrounded by friends, trying to be the big guy, then somebody makes a negative comment. You can almost see how that would happen, but for somebody to actually go out of their way and make repeated phone calls that are escalating in threat levels, what's the mentality that goes behind that? Like,
I don't know.
No.
Trolls, you can never quite understand a troll. Like,
that's.
I think in one night I got 4 calls one night, and then the following night 23 calls in one night. Voicemail messages, I just let it go to. It comes up as no caller ID, so just let it go to voicemail. So 23.
That's that. There's no words. 23 calls in one night by people who are trolling and just have nothing better to do than to try and cause distress for somebody. Yeah,
that's right. So first few calls, half an hour apart, and then I think there's calls after midnight there that have obviously just gone to voicemail.
Yeah. And, I mean, you've obviously listened to some of them. Do you listen to all of them, or can you...
I've listened to all of them. I've kept them for legal reasons, obviously, if they come back again, because I think they did try to contact me once through Instagram this year, and I just blocked them. But
yeah. And that's difficult because you do have a business that is going out and speaking and raising awareness. So to have to remove your phone number, that's impacting your business as well.
Yeah, and obviously you're only doing it on the side of your normal day job until you can build that up. It's difficult, I guess. You just have to have your email address there.
And look, it's 2022. People don't want to use the phone anyway these days. So
no, they don't.
Maybe it's not that bad.
I know, and I guess people can contact me through LinkedIn or through one of the speakers bureaus I'm signed up with. So it's just is what it is.
Yeah. So now, I guess, more flippant type questions. How do you go with buying shoes?
I'm not too bad, actually. You can see these Pride boots.
They are very cool.
Yeah, I got them from Williams. They're only $36, and then told them they were discontinuing them. So I went to Broadmeadows, and got another pair. So I got 2 pairs because they were discontinuing them. So I thought, they're good for speaking at an event during Pride Month, and keep 1 pair for wearing and 1 pair for speaking.
Yeah. And for people who are listening, they're sort of knee-high Pride striped boots, and they're fabulous. So it hasn't been... What size feet do you have?
10. So it can be 10, occasionally 9.5, depending where they're made, but generally okay. I did wear my cheap block heels from Novo broke yesterday because I was dancing. I must have just
caught them on the wrong angle.
Yeah, right angle. It broke. Luckily, I always carry a pair of flats with me to the races, so I wore my flats home.
Yeah.
So
So it's good that it's not too hard. I was just sort of going, if you've got big feet, that's going to be tricky to get to get shoes. You don't want to be going. Well, maybe you do
Yeah,
want
it
to be
can be
going
for
out in
some
Doc
trans women.
Martens.
Yeah, that's right. It can be. Yeah, so oversized 10, 11.
Yeah,
It's hard. Yeah,
that's it. And how do you go with stilettos?
yeah. I'm not too bad in stilettos because obviously I used to go out to clubs. I think one bar where they had drag shows. I used to go there because it was safe.
Yeah,
Could dress there. I dressed as a girl there, and it was back early 2000s. It's a restaurant now. It was a safe environment, so I used to wear my heels when I went out there. So if I went out clubbing to the Peel or somewhere, I could sort of wear my heels, get used to it.
yeah. There aren't many women who are over 40 who are still rocking stilettos. So it's one of the, well, look, from an outsider looking in, and I'm aware of all of the issues, well, not all of the issues, but I'm aware that there's a lot of issues that make this hard. But one of the fabulous things is you get to go and you don't have to stick with sensible clothes and that kind of thing. You can go out and go absolutely wild.
Yeah, well, if you wanted to, always tries to dress nicely, so which sort of people find a bit. Some people, young people who think that's odd, to just wear whatever. But yeah, you've probably seen some of my outfits online and dresses I wear. So yeah, you're probably got an understanding of how I dress. But yeah, today I can just wear jeans, boots, and top.
Yeah. But what is it like as somebody who didn't grow up? Cool. Somebody who didn't grow up with, the set idea of what you needed to wear, getting to go and rediscover that as an adult, or discover that as an adult?
I guess I was lucky. I worked as a teenager and adult in a fashion shop part-time, so it gave me a sense of fashion and understanding about, even though that was as a male, I guess you can then use that experience when you start dressing as a female, and you can sort of draw on that experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I can imagine it can be quite tricky for people who don't have that experience. So,
I guess probably naturally had a good taste as well, and figured out my colours. And if I wore a bright green, I'm all right, but if I wear a very pale green or pale yellow, I'd look sick. So,
yeah. There's somebody who I know over here who's in the process of transitioning, but has gone from wearing kind of death metal T-shirt, everything black, and ripped jeans and, that kind of thing, to now not having a clue how to start with dresses or what colours suit them, because they've only ever worn black, and now wants to explore that but doesn't know how and doesn't know where to go for support with that, I guess.
Yeah.
And some shopkeepers are less than supportive. Some don't have the skills, and some don't want to share them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, well, there's people like me out there, and we can support them. But yeah, I get it can be quite challenging navigating your way through that stuff.
Yeah. I had another question that I wanted to ask, and then I've got distracted by thinking about going shopping. As you've gone through the process, what are things that people have said, whether that's out of curiosity or just people oversharing, that you have gone, that was really not helpful, or that made you kind of go, is this the right choice for me to actually be doing this publicly, or should I still be only doing this as part-time? Like, what has been really unhelpful for you to hear or experience?
I guess when people you can hear comments in the background, or like I said at the races, people staring at you when you're out for dinner with a friend. Just people make you feel uncomfortable, and all that passive-aggressive behaviour.
Do you ever respond to that? I think you say
occasionally
at the races,
I have, but I've learned generally not to. But in the past I have, and got frustrated and angry, but I've learned not to now. It's just not worth it. It's just gets a bit exhausting.
Yeah, and that's it. I hear people say, well, we've got a really great opportunity to be able to educate people. But my goodness, educating everyone is just exhausting.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like anyone that is trans and does any sort of speaking. You know, a lot of us say, you know, feel like broken records sometimes.
How many times have I had this conversation? But here we go again. And so what, flip side of that, what have you experienced that has been really supportive and really helpful?
I guess getting the gender identity policy introduced at Victoria Racing Club was really good. And I guess it felt really welcome at the Melbourne Racing Club yesterday. So that was good in the Chairman's Club. So I guess when you go into those environments where you can just be yourself and, you know, have a dance, even though you're not with anyone, don't have a partner, but just have fun near the end of the day. So it's just a good day out and safe environment, and everyone respects each other. So it's good to go to places like that and be yourself. So or find a bar or restaurant you can go to where you feel welcome or safe, as opposed to others, you know, you see the bar person looking at you with a smirk on their face or whatever, for whatever reason. So, yeah, it's just finding the places to go, I guess, and sussing them out. I mean, you know, and that's hard for people, I guess, to even go there in the first place, and hard for people to come out sometimes if they're trans.
Yeah, and that's sort of, you know, we still talk about the importance of safe spaces, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the places where you feel like you can go and know that, well, I mean, it is what it says on the tag, somewhere where you can go and know that you're going to be safe, know that you're going to be welcomed, know that you're going to be supported.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you were, well, you do go and speak with people, but if you had a friend who had a child who was transitioning, what would you say to them in a way that they could support their child?
I guess just let them explore it. We all know some kids, they might be trans, but they just might be going through a phase where they're just exploring themselves. So they may not be trans, so just make sure you get the appropriate support through psychologists or psychiatrists. As I mentioned before, like this Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne, which treats trans kids. So it just might be a stage they're going through. They could be gay, or you just don't know. They're young, just let them explore that. The kid will tell you anyway. So, and then just make sure you got the right, you know, professional support. Just don't try and do it on your own. And you know, there's support groups for trans kids as well.
Mm. And there's been a massive issue over here with an organisation that was, and I'm just going to say again, it's 2022. And there was an organisation that was still offering conversion therapy. So, you know, I'm kind of thinking that perhaps one of the things that we could do is not go to places like that.
Yeah, it's been banned in Victoria.
Well, I thought it had been banned here in Western Australia as well, but apparently they still pop up from time to time. So, and if, you know, for someone like me or someone like, you know, any of us really, if we have somebody who we work with who is coming out, transitioning, what can we do to be supportive?
Just don't ask impersonal questions, just support them, just treat them as a person. Like if they're a good employee, good person, they're not going to change because they're transitioning. Just say, oh, how's it going? And if they want to share something with you, they will. If they don't, they don't. But don't ask prying questions. Yeah, you can say, oh, how's it going? Yeah, good, thanks. You know, don't ask, oh, so how was your breast surgery, love? You know, you don't ask those sort of questions. So.
It's so weird because I totally would.
But, you know, you wouldn't think you go.
Yeah, that's it. Maybe if I worked on a factory floor, I probably shouldn't.
Probably shouldn't, no.
Yeah. And if you're talking to somebody who they're the person who is transitioning, what advice would you have for them?
Take it slowly. Don't rush the process. Make sure you've got plenty of support. If you haven't got a lot of support, your friends and families, there's always psychologists, counsellors out there that can support you, help you navigate your way through the journey. And I know for teenagers here, there's -18, there's Transgender Victoria as well. Mm-hmm. And Globe, they're more, I guess, a business networking group for the LGBTIQ plus A plus community. But obviously, if you're an adult, you could probably go to that group and you probably through that find support as well. So there is support out there. You just got to reach out, and switchboard as well for people to ring up.
And here in Western Australia, we've got WAC, which is, it used to be called the West Australian AIDS Council. So now it just goes by the acronym of WAC, and that has support services available as well. And I'll be popping those in the show notes. Now, the question that I was going to ask before, how has it been? Have you found dating has been different since you have gone through transitioning?
Yeah, it has been dating. And then, like, I haven't really been on many dates. A lot of the sites I find are terrible. Yeah, just feel like they should just rename it to a sex line, a lot of them,
It's hard. I've been married for a very, very long time, and I sort of said that if I end up unmarried, then I'm staying single for life. Like, I don't know how on earth you navigate websites and, like, what happened to just meeting people? But I know that times have changed, Emma. So, and I know that you said that you haven't been on many dates. Do you think it will be easier because you're not having to, like, worry about part of your identity being hidden? Or is it harder because you now identify as a trans woman?
In some ways, it's harder hiding. It's harder hiding it, I guess. But in some ways, it's easier because people will say, "Oh, he's a bit odd," but unfortunately, once you're out there as a trans woman. Like female to male, obviously, if you have all the surgery, then in some ways it might be a little bit easier. It's still not saying it's easy, but obviously you can't hide your boobs. So if you have breast surgery or going around dressing as a female, even if you don't have any surgery. So it's hard because you're on the train, on the bus, you're just going about your business, doing your shopping, and you don't know what reaction you're going to get from people. And it depends where you live, what part of town you live in, I guess, or where you live as well, how people are going to react.
And then, so you've spoken a few times about the gender reassignment surgery. What are the pros and cons of that, do you think?
Well, I guess you've got to be really sure about it. So, not like you can go back. So,
and I suppose that's the thing with breast surgery, you can always have them removed, but you can't have a penis sewn back on.
No.
Yeah. So you got to be really sure. Sorry, I cut you off there, Cam.
You got to be really sure. So I know, obviously, going female to male, they can create a penis, but obviously, you don't want to be rushing those decisions, and you've got to be sure, and you've got to think about later on in life, will you still be happy in 10 years' time doing that, or if not, then you've got to just be comfortable in yourself and say, well, if someone comes along, they've just got to accept you the way you are. So,
and I suppose that's similar to what I was asking around the dating thing, that it is about trying to find somebody who loves you for who you are.
Yeah, that's it. And then if you're doing all this other stuff like I'm doing, you don't really have a lot of time to be on dating apps. So.
Well, that's it. I was joking, saying, how do you have time for a hobby? How on earth would you have time for a partner?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the transitioning feels like a full-time job, and on top of that, you're working and trying to run a side business. Yeah, there's no time for anything else, is there?
No.
Throughout the process, what has been something that has stood out for you, that has made you feel like I'm doing the right thing? This is who I am. This is who I'm supposed to be. This is me.
I guess just those days you feel really happy. You have your down days as well, but those days where you've sort of been nominated as a finalist for an award or getting an Australia Day award, you're sort of making a difference in some way. Being a finalist for a Gender Setter of the Year and the Women's Gender Leadership Awards, for example.
Yeah.
Previously, so just you sort of making a bit of an impact and paving the way, being a trailblazer, making it easier for future generations, I guess.
That's exhausting at times, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I've found it.
Can someone just be there first, and I'll just follow your path? Why do I have to beat my own?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so in I think the Today's Joy Facebook page that I spoke about, where I first saw you making posts, it is around finding joy every day. And
sometimes that can be hard, and then you sort of can be a bit moody during the day as well. So hormone replacement therapy, and just something triggers something, and emotionally or subconsciously. So you can sort of, your moods do swing a bit. So you can monitor that as well.
Yeah. So on that page, I saw you post about going for the first facial hair removal session. That was not good language. Laser surgery, laser hair removal is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, and that took you that one step closer to the end goal that you're looking for. Do you take time to take stock and go, look how far I've come?
Yeah, probably don't do that often enough. I should probably do that. Make a point of doing that sometime, or once a month or something. And I look back where I was and where I am now. I've come a long way. Yeah, still got a way to go, I guess.
Yeah. So if you take a minute now and think you started this process 7 years ago, I think you said.
Yeah.
And where you are now, how different is your life now?
I guess, well, I know from people at work said, before you're shy, stood in the lift, never looked me in the eye. Now you're confident, look me in the eye. So confidence level have gone up, and you've tried things I've never thought of, stand up in front of a group of people and speak. So, first few times you always struggle a bit through that, reading off paper and not doing it from memory. So you see how you've improved there with your speaking and just being more confident and a bit more relaxed in yourself and more confident to stand up for yourself and be yourself.
Do you feel like you're less shy now?
Yeah, I feel like I'm less shy, and you don't even realise you are until you don't even think about it. I mean, but if you take stock, when I was young, I was shy, and even as an adult, I was still quite shy, and only ever really happy when I went out dressed, part time. So
yeah. So it sounds like you've kind of gone, I wasn't being authentically me, so I was almost hiding away, and this is my authentic self, so I'm okay being seen now.
Yeah, that's right. So you don't really have to go out Saturday night anymore, because you can go do that anytime. So you went out yesterday, the first time in ages. You get past the bullying, which sort of makes you feel a bit fearful of going out, but you've got to get past that eventually. So went out yesterday and come home, but you come home at night, obviously, or early evening. So
before we wrap up, are there any final thoughts or anything else that you would like to share, or anything you want to end with?
I guess just for people to be more empathetic what trans go through, and recognise it's going to be easier if you do it when you're younger, or even when you do it younger, it's not easy. It's just everyone's different in terms of transitioning, what they will do, and people to be more understanding that you can't just rock up looking fully feminine one day. The previous day you were fully masculine, if I can put it that way. So
it's a process.
Well, it's a process.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you said before was around supporting kids, and that it may just be a phase. And there is a chance that it may be a phase, but let's love them through that phase, because they'll remember the love regardless.
And that's right. And then you'll get appropriate care, medical care as soon as you can. So for the child, then you can work through all that stuff. And
I think I just want to put in there as well, there's also a chance that it won't be a phase, and that's okay too.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's okay too. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's it. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And I know that this was a short notice interview, and sort of said, hey, would you be interested in doing it? How's the day after tomorrow? So I really appreciate your availability and chatting to me so early on a Sunday morning. And so what I'll do, I'll list the different places that people can find you. So, and that was one of the things that you mentioned. Can you just tell me again the name of your Facebook group that's got Supermodel in it?
Alyssa Griffith's Transgender Supermodel Advice page.
So, and that's probably where some of those, like the comments that you spoke about the Vogue and those things.
Yeah, that and the real that and the real Melissa Griffiths page, I suppose.
Yeah.
Like the normal Melissa Griffiths page, I don't really cop so much trolling, but yeah, those two I probably would, because I think they could have worldwide reach or could just, go out anywhere. So especially for promoter posts. So.
Yeah. So I will include those in the show notes as well, and providing you're happy with that, obviously. And then, hopefully people who hear this can have a better understanding around some of the processes. I'm going to be honest. I didn't realise the extent of the surgical interventions that you would have to be looking at. So it never occurred to me that you would have facial surgery. I suppose I'd thought about the laser hair surgery, but I hadn't thought about vocal, having your vocal cords having to be surgically adapted or Adam's apple shape.
You don't have to do that, but
No.
If you want to go down the full path of having all of that stuff, you can choose to do it. You can choose not to.
Yeah, look, I guess I had the idea that people could choose to have some surgical interventions or choose to have no surgical interventions but still live as a woman.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
But when I thought about surgical interventions, I thought about having a boob job and gender reassignment surgery. It hadn't occurred to me the extent of those surgical interventions. So that was really interesting for me to hear about and to consider. And I also hadn't considered the financial barriers. So I'd considered the social barriers and the the bullying and the potential dangers and the issues with acceptance and inclusion, but hadn't thought about how much time that meant having off work and the actual costs for it. When people are going, oh, it's just a phase. Well, if that is just a phase or just something that this person's doing for attention, they're mighty committed to just getting some attention, aren't they? Yeah, you've got to be pretty.
Yeah, so it's So just having that, all the different surgeries and stuff, and obviously, as I said, you can't just do one after the other in a week, sort of thing.
That's it. It's a heck of a process. And, off air, you also spoke about looking at getting teeth, dental work and Invisalign and those types of things as well that, the things that people look at regardless of gender, but still, how that impacts you looking more feminine.
Yeah, that's right. It does. Yeah, and it does impact on your day, how you feel about yourself and your day-to-day life. So it's a lot of work on your inner self as well.
Yeah, that's it. Inner self and outer self. So, so thank you very much for opening my eyes to some of these issues. And hopefully people listening, it will have given them a broader understanding of that as well. So I really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
No, that's all right. And then obviously having voice lessons as well is another thing. So
yeah, the list just goes on, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. So
I wonder if there's ever a point where you go, that's it, I'm done, I'm happy. Or does it go to the next thing and then go, oh, well, I could just tweak this or do that. But I suppose you're partway through the journey, so maybe we'll touch base in a couple of years and see how you're going.
Yeah. It just depends on what everyone wants. So and then obviously finding the right speech pathologist as well in terms of voice feminisation. You just go along with Dr. Paddle's recommendation, and then if they don't quite work out, then you might find someone else who will help you speak like a female. So it's just navigating that as well.
Yeah, that's it. There's lots of different paths to look at, and I suppose sometimes it must get overwhelming thinking about all of the different things to think about.
Yeah, exactly. And you just go, well, just got to take it one day at a time.
That's it. One step at a time.
Yeah, and one surgery at a time if you're going to have surgery.
Yeah.
So obviously you're going to have surgery because you want to alter your pitch. So
lots of things to think about. But so I will wrap up for today and just wanted to really appreciate your sharing so openly with us and appreciate everything that you have brought to today's episode.
That's all right. Thank you for having me, Emma.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of A Hidden World of Women, a podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. For more information on the services we offer, head to whws.org.au or Women's Health and Wellbeing Services on YouTube and social media. Looking forward to the next episode where we uncover the hidden world of women.